Welcome to Teach It Tuesday. I'm Teresa Wiedemeyer. Today we're going to be working with silk cocoon and silk rod. Before we get started, I'm going to go over some of the things you may want to gather up to use while making your silk cocoons. The first thing is the glue. I have tried glue sticks, I have tried tacky glue, and this E6000 is really the only glue that I have found that is easy to work with, holds anything you want to stick to the silk cocoon with, and it also dries perfectly clear. I also have some toothpicks that I'm going to use to spread the glue. I have a sharp scissor to make cutting the cocoons a lot easier. I also have a sharp needle, a smaller needle for threading things through if I need it, and also a dental threader. And these make it really nice. Let me make sure you can see it. These are really great for threading locks through, any little beads you might want to add. So these are some of the things I've gathered up. I also have some silk thread that I'm going to use, and I have my cocoons and I have my silk rods. Now, we've used the cocoons before in other videos on retting method, but today I'm going to add something different. This is silk rod. You can see when I fluff it up that there's a bunch of layers of bits of silk in this. And this is a waste product of the silk industry. And they come kind of just in these chunks, rod shaped. They're cut off the equipment in the silk reeling process. A lot of them still have the silkworms stuck in them. Some of them are nice and soft and pliable like this one when you get it. Kind of already deconstructed. You can see the layers in it. Let me see if I can get that close. You can kind of see when I stretch it out all the different fibers and layers. And then other ones are just kind of stiff, and I'm going to warn you ahead of time, they don't smell great. They kind of have a, well, they stink. So when you're going to use them, be prepared when you start dyeing them or you start soaking them, they are going to have kind of a funky little odor to them, but that goes away. So what I'm going to start with first is I'm going to clear a little space, and we're going to do our first cocoon, and we're going to keep it really simple. Okay, now that we've cleared some space, we're going to get started with the first cocoon. The first one is really simple. It's a nice little effect, kind of just a little swirly effect. They look really cute hanging on your yarn. And for this one, I just literally took the scissors and cut around and around and around till I got it close to the top, but I also left myself plenty of room to thread the little pencil lock through. Now, to thread it through, what I've done is I've just used the large needle and I've pushed it through. On this one, I threaded the lock right onto the large eye of this needle and literally just stitched it right through. When you add this to your yarn, the locks will grab on. You can leave the little curly tips out to, add a little dimension to your yarn. But these are just a real fun, little easy kind of decoration to add into your art yarns. Oops, sorry, bumped my leg. Okay, the next one I'm going to show you is another really simple one. And this one's fun. This one is just your cocoon with a long lock. And on this one, I've tied a knot in the lock. And I've put 2 holes in the cocoon. And I've split the lock and threaded it through. When you go and put this into your yarn, there's no reason to really put knots or anything, because when you spin this, it will grab onto the yarn that you're working on, and it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to be nice and sturdy in your yarn, and the knot inside keeps it from kind of pulling apart. So I'm going to show you how to do this one. Now, like I said, what I've done is I've taken a long lock, I've tied a knot in it, so I have some that's going to stick out, and then have some that's going to be fed through the holes. On this one, I'm going to use this pretty little pink cocoon. And I'm going to try, let's see if I can thread it with the threader. Sometimes I can, and sometimes I end up using the large-eyed needle. Here we go. So I'm only going to thread one side at a time through this. So I'm going to grab this little piece and I'm going to pull it through. Easy peasy. Now let's see if I can get the threader back into the other hole. There we go. Not as hard as I thought it would be. All right, so we're going to put the other tip of the lock or end of the lock through and just give it a little tug. Sometimes you have to fish them through. And there we go. This little cocoon is ready to be spun into the yarn. It's got this beautiful little tips hanging out of it. Alrighty, so the next one. This one is a little unusual. It's something a little different. We've seen cocoons that are cut with locks and Angelina, but this one was kind of fun. This one is actually, if you can see it, has little stars. And the stars were made with a simple hole punch. And you can use any shape hole punch, little hearts, circles, whatever. But what I've done is just stuck it inside and punched the little stars, although that one has Angelina in it already. I can still kind of show you. And then you see the little star. This one and this one are just glued on the inside with the E6000. And then the Angelina is stuffed in there. And that's it. We threaded this one with a piece of ribbon. And this one's ready to be put in your yarn. You can knot the ribbon because ribbon is a little more slippery. So what I would do to knot it is I would make kind of an overhand knot and just slide it down on my needle so it butts up against the cocoon. And you can always fluff the cocoon back out with the back of something if you crush it a bit. And then on this side, I'm going to do the same thing. I don't usually knot it when I'm working with locks because the locks grab onto the yarn better. But if I'm using silk, or maybe like a linen thread or something like that, I always like to secure it a little bit. And there we go, we've slid that other knot down. And that way, this cocoon is not going to slip off of the silk yarn. So it's on there pretty securely. All right. Let's do another one. While I was doing the demo on this one, I was videoing and we had an emergency alert. So I did not realize that my computer had kicked me off of the video until I was all finished. So this one is already glued in. So I'm going to kind of give you a quick demonstration on this one. This one is just almost looks like a little hat. And I did some stitching around it. Just playing with it to see what I could come up with. It's just linen, orange linen thread, and these are just glued together. It's knotted right at the top of the cap. I've kind of poked straight through on this one. This one will probably get some little beads strung along here and knotted again. But what I'd like to do is show you kind of how to put these together. All right, so as you can see, this one, the hole is not showing. So what I've done on this one is I've taken the cocoon and my sharp scissors and I've just kind of snipped around the cocoon like so, just making little cuts. And then once I'm finished cutting all the way around my cocoon, which some of it has already been started, I will kind of roll the edges of this out. I'm hoping you can see this. All right, so there's my last cut. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flare these out. Now you can kind of bend them with your fingers if you'd like, but I find that you get a much better curl on them if you take something like a little dowel or a skewer, and you just kind of take them, and I'm going to see if I can make sure you see this, and I'm just literally rolling them on the skewer. So what this is doing is just kind of giving them a nice little bend. So we're going to do that all the way around until you get it all nice and flared out. And then all I've done is I've taken on this one just some of the E6000 glue, put it on the inside, put a little bit on the top edge of this cocoon, and just stuffed it inside. Once this is dry, then I'll show you on this one. When I thread it, I'm going to try to catch both cocoons, and I'm going to try to figure out where the opening is on the cocoon inside. If I don't feel like I can catch both of the cocoons, what I'll do is kind of go in then at an angle. It'll change the angle in which it sits on my yarn, but to me that just adds some dimension and texture to the yarn, makes it fun. So when the glue is dry on this one, I will thread that up later on. And for this one, I'll probably just use a pretty little ribbon, probably that or the green. Just depends on my mood, I guess. All right, so the next one I'm going to show you is a little more involved. And this is where the silk rod comes into play. And what I've done is I have dyed some silk rods, and I'll show you kind of how the silk rods come apart. Here's some that already was sort of softened and deconstructed. And on the dyed ones, you can see a lot better the cross hatching that occurs when they cut it off of the equipment. So you see this kind of fibrous cross hatching. It really is kind of a neat thing to play with. These look really cool as features in a weaving. They also can be picked apart and added to bats, or really just kind of pulled open and spun into your art yarns. It gives it a really nice texture. They're not super slick or shiny, but they really do grab color beautifully. You get that little bit of sheen, and you also just get a really interesting effect. So what I'm going to do is show you how they come apart. When you get your silk rod and you've dyed it, you're going to see that you can find these little edges on it. And what I've done, and you can see it even better here, is I've kind of picked the edge up, and you can hear it's kind of crackly and stiff sounding. And what I do is I just kind of carefully pull them apart, like so. And I peel however many layers I'm going to need. Now, when you get to the end, you're going to find that there's a really kind of hard bit here where all the Saracen has kind of stuck together and collected up. I just pull that off. And then you have these really cool sheets of silk. And you can get creative with it. What I've done with it is I've taken some of it and I've kind of used it as a little flower effect in this cocoon. On this cocoon, I've taken the silk rod and I've pulled it apart. I'm hoping you can see that. And then I've added a lock in it, which is held in place when I threaded it through. And I'm going to show you how to do this. Okay, the first thing you're going to need is some layers of the silk cocoon. I've already taken some of it and got a start on it because it's a little consuming. So what I've done is I've threaded my needle with the silk thread. You can use any kind of thread. It really doesn't matter. Excuse me. And I've just sort of done an in and out stitch all the way through the edge of it, all on the same edge. And I'm simply going to pull it to gather it. And then once it's gathered, I'm going to kind of curl it together. Now, when I curl it together, I'm going to add the lock to it. And for this little lock, I've got 2 little lock pieces just tied together with a piece of ribbon. This is the ribbon that's going to, be used to thread through it. So what I've done is tied them together, just formed a little knot on it. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to lay it right inside the gathered up piece. So you can kind of see the little end sticking out a bit. Then I'm going to take my thread and my needle and I'm going to pull it tight. I'm going to try to pull it tight. Let's try that again. All right. So I pulled it tight. Now I'm going to take my needle, make sure it's good and snug, and then I'm just going to kind of stitch through. I'm going to just stitch through a few times to make sure it's held tight and that it doesn't come apart. Let's make sure we're not kind of all tangled up here. So once I stitch it through, kind of get it locked into place, I'm going to add it to the cocoon. So let's see, maybe a couple more stitches just to make sure it doesn't come apart when I go to glue it in. All right, hopefully I wasn't out of frame too much for that. So I'm going to just hold it in place. And we're going to snip that off. And this is what we have. It's kind of almost like a little fuchsia flower look. So you can see that we have the locks, we have the silk. Now, what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to take this cocoon. I've already poked, and I'll show you with the scissor, a fairly decent hole in the top because I want to be able to thread both of these through and pull that edge of the lock right up to it. So what I'm going to do is take my glue, and you can hear my dog whining because he's outside and I'm inside. And I'm going to take my E6000, I'm going to put it on a plastic tray, and I'm going to coat the inside of the cocoon, but I'm going to try to make sure that I don't cover the hole in the top because that'll make it much more difficult to thread. So once I get the glue inside there and I get a little bit more glue on the part of the silk rod so I know that I get good adhesion. Let's see. Maybe just put a little bit like right along this edge. And once I get the glue on there, I'm going to take my bead threader or my dental threader and I'm going to put my silk through it, and then I'm going to thread this through the hole. If I can see the hole. There we go. And it's going to get a little glue on it. I don't think there's really any avoiding that. I've tried to do them where I put the glue on after I've started threading it, and it just seems to make it much more difficult. So you'll just be able to kind of pull the glue off. So what we've done is pulled it up through, and the ribbons will be hidden in your yarn anyway. I'm going to take off any extra glue because there always seems to be extra glue. I'm going to flare this out a little bit like this. I'm going to tug it and work it around to where I like it, and that's it. Now once that's good and dry, I will knot the top of this, and that'll be ready to be spun into the yarn. So this is probably the most complicated one that I'm showing you. The rest of them are super simple and they're a lot of fun. But I have one more thing to show you, and I thought it would be fun to do something for the kids. And what I've done is taken some silk cocoon, and I'm going to use these plain white ones. And we're going to get some Sharpie markers. And I will put these down here so you can see them. So they're just nice, big, fat, colorful Sharpie markers. And what we're going to do with them is we're going to make these little kind of tie-dyed looking cocoons. And these are super, super simple, super cute. You're not working with any dyes or anything that, you know, is toxic. And I'm going to show you how to do these real quick. And this is something that you can do with your kids. So, here's what you do. You take one of the silk cocoons. If you look at the cocoons, I'm going to try to get it up here. You see that some of them have like a fuzziness to them. Pull as much of that fuzziness off as you can. And that fuzzy kind of sticks to everything. So just know that you're going to have fuzzy fingers. So what I've done is I take the cocoon and I take my Sharpie markers. Let's do some blue. We're just going to do little swirlies on them. And make some dots, something fun that'll just kind of have the kids involved, and they don't have to be fantastic artists, and they can just have fun with it. Use any colors they want. And let's put some blue up here. Now you will get Sharpie on your fingers, but it comes off, no worries. And let's do some green. So let's put some green dots on here. And I'm just going to make just kind of little circles. You can already see the blue coming off on my fingers, but that's okay. So we'll do some nice bright green. And we'll work it around. Put some up here. And then maybe for our last color, I don't know where my yellow went, but let's do some of this. Just tiny dots of this really dark green. All right. Now, once you get the Sharpie marker on your cocoons, and I have one here that I did in red, purple, and blue, what you're going to do is you're going to take and put them over something. I'm just going to put them over this little container here. And what you're going to do is you can put them on, let me make sure you can see this. You can put them on a toothpick to hold them. You can put them on, that's not working the way I wanted it to. All right. You can put it on really anything because it may drip. I'll use the back of this, so I'm not real worried about this. So you will take some rubbing alcohol. I just have it in a little spray bottle. I've marked it so nobody uses it for anything else. And I'm going to just spray it. And I'm going to kind of turn it so the alcohol goes all over. It's actually easier to put it on my finger. And as you can see, as the alcohol hits it, it spreads the marker out. So it kind of gives it this almost tie-dyed, kind of fun effect. You can add more marker if you want. You can let it just spread. As it dries, it's going to spread even more. So these little areas will start migrating around, and you'll have just kind of a cute little tie-dyed fun thing that the kids can do. And they can be added into the yarn as well. Don't add them to a yarn that you're going to wash or get wet. Also, when you steam silk cocoons, they get soft. So be aware of that, because you'll have to reshape them if you steam them. And then let's just do this one. This one, the marker is not quite as dry, so it'll probably spread farther. And you can see, if I didn't put that right in front of you, you can see how the ink is starting to become more dilute and spreading around the cocoon. Just give it a little more, let it really get drippy and runny. This will take a little bit to dry, but not very long. And they can even be strung on little necklaces for the kids. It's just kind of a fun little activity to do when you guys are working on your big projects and the kids want to be involved. It's just a little something that they can do to feel part of things. So, to recap, we did silk cocoons using silk rod and dyed cocoons. And we used long locks, some silk ribbon. We stitched the silk rod with just some silk thread. You can use anything you want. The thing is, just have fun, be creative, don't be intimidated by it. It's just a cocoon. You can always just spiral cut it if it doesn't come out the way you want it, and just enjoy it. Art is supposed to be fun. Well, thank you very much. Hope the whining dog wasn't too disruptive, and I appreciate you watching. Have a blessed day.